She is the most important person that I ever met in my life, and I think I ever will meet, ever.
So I would say she was just one of the most open, caring people.
Kind. Grandma's kind. And I think like a genuine kind.
She was the most unselfish and the most caring person you'd ever meet, ever.
She was a burst of sunshine whenever anyone came in, full of smiles, and there was just a warmth, not a fake warmth, a genuine warmth that radiated from her that was so welcoming.
She was beautiful inside and out, and she was strong. She was strong, but she was kind.
Genuine, loving, caring, fashionable, funny.
I believe she was honest. I think she saw the good in people.
Was so giving and just a sweet spirit about her, just full of love.
Caring, compassionate, honest.
Trustworthy, completely trustworthy.
Just an incredible woman of character, loves unconditionally, without a doubt.
Smile, always a kind word, just happy, positive.
And just really, really, really wanted to be involved, you know, in your life and just show you how much she appreciated and cared for you. Definitely.
Just generally loved people. And I think she could find the good in anybody.
Darlene wasn't one of those people that was always telling you she loved you, but she showed you that she loved you.
Your mom just glowed with love.
She had the highest degree of integrity and honesty and sincerity and compassion and love of any person I have ever met.
I think anybody that met her, I feel in my heart, she just showered them with love.
It didn't make any difference where you lived, what you wore. She would treat you the same.
Mom didn't have any preconceived ideas about anybody, and she didn't judge anybody at all.
Her attitude was that that's another human soul. Doesn't matter what you look like, how you dress, how you act, what party you vote for, the choices you've made in life. None of that factored in for Mom. It was all about, that's a human being, and I'm going to treat that person like I would want somebody to treat me.
Her reacting to anybody from any part of the world, any social, economic status, it didn't matter. They were just a person, and Mom was going to find something good in them. So
she could go anywhere and fit in. You could take her to any classification of people, no judgments, no amount of money. She loved people, and she really honestly wanted to know where you came from and how you got there.
You know, I mean, I don't go to church or anything, but she could sit there and talk to me even knowing that, and never attacked me for not going to church. She just accepted me the way I was, and I loved that.
So, yeah, I want to be like her when I grow up.
It was always, how are you doing? And what's going on in your life? She never asked, ever, for any help, unless she absolutely needed it. And she never focused on herself. She always focused on, how are you doing?
I mean, the thing that stuck out the most was how selfless she was. Everybody came before she did, no matter what.
I think people I just don't think people ever forget how she makes them feel, because when she's talking to you, you feel like you're the most important person around.
Her love and support for her family was just unlimited. I don't know where she kept it all. I mean, it was just overflowing always. And she just never let anyone feel unloved ever, no matter what. So, yeah, she was just very selfless. Even, she would be in pain or tired, but she tried to put that aside just to make you, feel good, feel okay, feel loved.
And I think Mom also showed what real humility means. She never was seeking the spotlight. She never, wanted to be the center of attention. She just wanted to make people happy and comfortable and feel loved, and that's just a rare thing. So
I never, ever, ever heard your mother complain, ever.
She was definitely the real deal. She was genuine. And we need more people like her.
She was always, from my earliest memory, just this like invincible person who could do anything. From grabbing snakes by the tail in the rafters of the basement and throwing them out of the house, to chasing rats, and all the way up to running outside in the backyard with a broom chasing 2 bears out of her backyard.
Apparently there was like a bear outside her house or something, and it was like eating her plants.
And I turned around and there was 2 big black bears like coming up the driveway. And she turned around and there was. I've never seen my grandmother run, but that one time, and she ran up to the house. We both ran. We left all the groceries.
She grabbed a broom and she ran outside and started chasing the bear with the broom.
And then this woman came outside onto the porch and stomped her feet and yelled at the bears right there, and they ran away. And my grandmother was like 100 pounds. So I think she was just brave in every sense like that, Like, who does that? But she wasn't shaken. You couldn't shake her because she knew she could handle it. And she did.
Mom was never one to throw up her hands and give up on anything, ever. She was tough.
She was brave. Fearless is the better word. She was fearless.
If it came to like bugs or any kind of like weird animal, then we'd have to call Grandpa. But other than that, yeah, I think she's a pretty brave person. She's not afraid to speak up, and I think that's a strong thing to do because I have trouble speaking up for myself, so it's really good if someone can do that for themselves.
She's brave to move to those different cities. She's brave to tackle 5 children. I've seen her just be brave in so many situations when she went through Wegner's when I was in middle school.
Well, they grew up in a time when things were so different than they are, than with the life that we live, that you had to be strong. And you have your kids young, and imagine us nowadays, we'd never live a marriage.
It took courage to live there. You spent great amounts of time around these strong women who taught you things like honesty, hard work. You witnessed it. It was by example. You saw the work ethic.
She'd been through a lot in her life, and I think that was bred into her, and through her experiences, she lived through some almost unspeakable things, just incredibly difficult things in her life, and she did it with such grace and yet a determination, a grit, that if you didn't really know her, you would think she was just a nice old lady. But there was a steely grit in her. There was no quit. There was no giving up.
Well, this is the thriving metropolis of Curlew, Washington. Population 100 people, and it's been this way, as far as I know, for at least the last 70 years.
I think they both came from, sort of similar financial kind of situations, but vastly different social situations, right? So mom grew up in the middle of nowhere with not a lot of people around, and dad grew up just outside of New York City.
So Mom grew up in this place that might as well have existed in 1830. It was phenomenally primitive, but they had everything they needed, and they were a warm family, and they didn't want for anything. They just didn't have the bells and whistles. I think Dad grew up in a much harsher environment. There was a lot of hardship economically.
I'd never been west of the Mississippi when I got stationed in the Air Force out at Washington State. This place is a town that had 100 people, and it was located 3 miles from the Canadian border. So I got on a plane and flew from Seattle to Spokane. And then when I got to Spokane, I got on a bus of some kind and went to Colville, Washington. And when I got to Colville, I went into the bus station and I said, "How do I get to Curlew?" And the guy said, "You have to take the stage." I said, "What?" He said, "You have to take the stage." I said, "You mean like the stagecoach kind of a thing?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Except now it's a panel truck. It used to be horse and stuff, but now it's a panel truck." I said, "Oh, okay." So it turns out that there was one guy driving the truck, the stage, and me, and he was delivering the mail in all these little cities as we drove. Finally, we stopped and dropped off some mail, and he came out to the truck and he said, "Well, aren't you going to get out?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "We're here." I said, "You got to be kidding." He said, "No, this is Curlew." So I looked down the street for airplanes. There were no airplanes on this road. Believe me, there were none. So I said, "Well, where's the air base?" He said, "Oh, it's 10 miles up the road. You give them a call and they'll come down and get you." So he went back in, sat in the car, and I looked up at the sky, 20 years old, 21 years old at that time, I guess, and I said, "Lord, why did you do this to me?" Well, we're on the site of Brown's Sawmill. This was built in 1937 by Evan Brown and run until just a few years ago. And Mom, Darlene, Pug, whichever name you prefer, was born in 1938 in Colville, and the family lived over here at the mill.
And I spent a great deal of time at that mill. Growing up, every time we would go there, that's where I loved to be. I loved to watch Grandpa Brown saw logs.
I grew up in the Depression, and my mother and father had a really hard time. And she grew up in a whole different situation. She was in a rural place.
We're kind of in the middle of nowhere. Nothing's easy to get to. There isn't a local grocery store. There isn't a local hardware store. And we kind of live off the land.
And they had no telephones. They had no television.
80 years ago, we had no telephone. We had no television. Our dad had an old car radio that he'd taken out of some old car and put it on a little shelf in the house, and took a long wire and ran it up in the tree out beside the house. And that was the antenna, so our communication with the outside world was Spokane, a couple stations in Omak. So Friday night they would always listen to the fights and some of these things that you look back and remember. But we had no indoor plumbing, usually a double holer outside. We had no indoor water. We had no electricity. We used either a gas lantern or a kerosene lantern in the house. And my mother would wash clothes for all these guys that worked for us.
It was a different kind of a life. They were people of the earth, so to speak. You know, they grew stuff. And if they didn't grow it, they had enough. He was in the sawmill business and had a crew of men that worked for him, her father, this is. And you know, those men had to eat lunch, and Mama and her sister Nancy had to learn how to cook, take care of them, and her mother at one point had tuberculosis and was in a sanitarium for some period of months, quite a while, and so that put even a bigger burden back on the girls.
Growing up as we grew up wasn't necessarily easy. Mom was in and out of hospitals. Pug cooked, and I did dishes, and I still don't cook to this day, you know, I never liked to cook. And I always had to make Ed's lunch before he went to school or then later to work.
So it was a little different life than what we have today.
Ed had to chop all the wood every day because the stove that cooked for the mill crew was wood. So you had to have all the little tiny pieces of wood. And I know they all helped with everything because kids just didn't get to sit around.
They were very young to be in the environment that they were in. As I said, Grandma was ill a lot of the time, and so you know they had to do a lot of things that normal kids today would never even think about having to do. The responsibilities of chopping wood and packing water and preparing meals and cleaning, and you know, at the same time taking care of two young boys.
These girls, for the time they're little and big enough to make a bed or sweep a floor, one of the things, I had to go outside, I split all the wood, and we had a lot of wood. I mean, take hours every day and pack all the water. But the girls worked inside. She got an early start on it, but they were raised to clean and to cook and to work.
It wasn't uncommon for Evan to bring a load of his workers in for lunch. And Mom talks about the first time it happened to her, she was probably 14. And it was, hey girl, let's get us some lunch, right?
The men who did the logging and worked in the sawmill during the week would come during the week on horseback, and they would stay in a lodging in a hall. I can't remember what they called it, bunkhouse, and that's where they lived. And Mom and Nancy and Joanne, the three women, the three sisters, and Grandma Brown would cook for them and wash their clothes and clean the bunkhouse, and that's what they did. They were, their whole lives they spent cooking and cleaning and scrubbing and washing clothes, and that was all they knew. And they were doing it for, I don't know how many, there were a dozen men or more at any given time.
And when you're cooking for 12, 14 men plus a family of 5 or 6, there's a lot of dishes to be done. And those girls had to wash those dishes. Their job is to wash and dry those dishes every night and every morning before they went to school. They would make all the beds, and I could throw my clothes on the floor because I had to go outside and go to work. They'd make the bed and pick up the clothes and get all that stuff ready to go and get themselves ready before the bus came at 7 o'clock.
You know, I never seen any women like that. I mean, they knew everything. They were mature, knowledgeable women when they were 15 years old. They knew how to take care of kids, they knew how to cook, they knew how to manage a household. They just knew all that stuff.
But they worked very, very, very hard. Like, we don't know that kind of work. That's why they could be married and have such commitment, I think, is because they knew a different lifestyle than we knew.
She was a mature woman when most teenagers are having fantasies about the latest rock stars or something. I mean, she was a mature person. She could do everything domestically. She could cook, sew, take care of babies. She was a very mature person.
So we lived at the mill until we were probably, I would guess, 12, maybe 13.
And they moved then to a house on the Kettle River, which was 4 or 5 miles away, where the family still lives today. And that's an incredibly beautiful place, 4 miles from the Canadian border, with a crystal clear river coming down right next to the house, 10 feet from the house. And
from the whole time I knew Mom and this family, this is the house that they lived in. She's the most beautiful thing I ever saw in my life. She was just beautiful, physically and every other way, but she certainly impressed me.
Being typical young girls, we were boy crazy. And you take someplace like Curlew, and here come all these guys.
It was a little Air Force installation. And right where that curve was, went up to the left, there was a building that was called the NCO Club. And NCO stands for Non-Commissioned Officers Club. It was a place where we had a bar and grill. You could get, hamburgers, milkshakes, hot dogs. You could get hard liquor.
But they had an NCO club up there, and that's where everybody went and played bingo. That's where they would have dances, probably Saturday night. And it was kind of the local spot to go.
Outside of that building is where I met Mom. What does all that mean? It means that's when I met my soulmate.
I'd love to get you on a slow boat to China.
What they would do once a year, they would take a barrel and put it in the river and let it float up into Canada and come back down again. The whole event was called the Barrel Derby. And they had a king and a queen and all that stuff. And so the base, or the squadron that I was stationed at, they would participate. And one of the things they let us do as part of the celebration was to enter the beard growing contest. That was one of the contests to be judged. So I had a goatee and a mustache growing, and I'm telling you this story because this leads into how I met Mama for the first time. She was dating somebody else, and he didn't have any money. And he came to me and he wanted to borrow some money.
She was then going with a guy named Jerry Betteridge, see what I remember? And but it wasn't long after that.
I decided I needed a little extra money, so I was going to try to get a job at one of the local sawmills. And I went down at night into Curlew to one of the sawmills, and I was looking for the foreman. And it was dark, and there weren't many lights at all. You couldn't see anything, just shadows, and there were logs laying all over the ground, and there was logs. They have what they call, in a sawmill, they have a thing called a mill pond. Vile smelling place. It's like a septic tank. It's awful. And I was gently walking over these logs, tiptoeing, jumping, whatever, until I went from a log that was on the ground to a log that was in the mill pond. And I didn't know it. I couldn't tell that there was bark and leaves and things all over the ground. And when my feet hit that one that was in the water, I came over like a huge Douglas fir coming down, and I landed on my chin on another log in the water. So my beard and my mustache and my pride and joy were full of blood that was clotting, and my body, having gone into the mill pond, had a vile smell to it. So I didn't even go to the interview. I just got in the car and I went back to the base.
And Joe came in one night to the barracks room and he was wet from head to foot. And I think he tried to step on a log and he thought it was solid. And it threw him off and he went down in one of these big ponds.
And I took my clothes off, threw them away, took a shower, and gingerly shaved my beard off. And then I went over to the NCO club to have a beer. And lo and behold, when I got over there, I saw Jerry, one of the guys I knew on the base, who had his girlfriend in the car with her sister, and he had, as usual, no money. So he came in to buy them hamburgers or something, and he wanted to borrow money from me. And so he ordered some hamburgers, and I gave him some money, and he asked me if I'd take some stuff out to the car. So I did. And I gave them to Mom and her sister Nancy, who was sitting in the back seat.
And we were sitting in a car right over there.
And we got talking about things like school and her future.
And that's when he asked me what I wanted to do when I got out of school or something. I said, well, I'm in 8th grade.
And she said, I'm in the 8th grade. And then I moved over about 4 feet.
And he shot out of the other side of the car like he'd been shot out of a gun.
Then we started a conversation, and I had Band-Aids on my chin, going down this way and going across this way. And of course, the first subject was, well, what happened to you? Now, these are two girls who grew up, whose father was in the lumber business. They understood what mill ponds were. They knew all about this stuff. And it started laughter that just grew and grew and grew. This dumb dude from the East coming out here doesn't know what he's doing. And look what happens to him. Then I began to think about how beautiful your mother was, and if there wasn't some excuse that I could use to talk to her some more, because I knew she wasn't in the 8th grade. So it turns out she owned a trumpet, and I played a trumpet, so I thought, wow, this is great. I don't play that well, but she doesn't know that. So I asked if I could borrow her trumpet, and she said, sure, just come over tomorrow. So that was my cue to get over and see her by myself.
And Joe gave me a ride home from that get-together, and but not any kind of thing like a date, just a ride home. And right away, she was going with Joe.
And Jerry didn't have her for too long after I saw her.
We've been on a faraway.
And if you listen to Jack Corbin, he would say it was in some cafe in Curlew, and I got up and walked over to her and said, hey, I'd like to get you on a slow boat to China.
When he met Darlene, he said something to her about wishing he could be on a slow boat to China or something like that to her.
I'd love to get you.
I'm not sure that was the exact beginning.
Go to China.
I was kind of awestruck with her, I think, in the beginning. She's such a beautiful woman. Young lady, I was just absolutely mesmerized by how pretty she was. There was no superficiality about her whatsoever. Everything was well-founded with her. There was nothing that was phoniness or petty or, like I say, superficial. There was none of that. And she was smart, very smart, and very, very curious. When we were married, she had not yet finished high school, and her father was the president of the school board in Curlew, and he didn't want her to go back to school because he, to say, quote unquote, high school is no place for a married woman. Well, he said, okay, Dad, we understand. And the plan was we'd get married, and then when school started, she'd go back to school. And she did that, and she rode the base bus. They had a bus that went from the base, took all the kids, and she rode that bus and went to school for that last year and graduated, and the proudest person in the audience was her father. So.
It's one of the true love stories I've witnessed in my life. When they're together, they're just together. They work really well as a team. But the way he talks about her and the love that he has for her is so deep and so it's just unbounded. He truly cherishes her, everything she does and everything she is.
But the way they were able to come together and complement each other was huge. I mean, it was a beautiful thing.
They set the standard way too high. Way too high. I mean, their relationship is just amazing. What I love about their relationship is their friendship. You know, their friendship is just amazing. I mean, they have memories that go back from before I was born, probably. So, yeah, I mean, they could just finish each other's sentences, and they just could play off of each other, and it was just an amazing thing to be a part of, to be able to witness that.
You know, they're soulmates. They were for each other. I think their relationship is probably one of the longest relationships I've ever known anyone to go through, and the most successful. So that was pretty cool to see.
Especially how young they got married. The fact that they were still together and still like to be around each other all the time says a lot.
And I remember so many times I would see them sitting there holding hands in church. And I thought that was so sweet.
Incredible that you could be married to the same person for 60-some years. Like, you have to wake up every day and choose to still love that person even if you don't like them that day. And I'm sure there had been times where they didn't like each other that day, or maybe that week or that year, but they chose to stay with each other and chose to put in that hard work that it requires to stay married.
You knew that they loved each other more than anything. I mean, she cared for him, and he cared for her, just like she cared for everybody else. And I mean, you knew that, and we saw that. I remember their 60th anniversary when my grandpa wrote her a song, and he sang it to her in front of the whole church. Just really sweet. You could tell that they had, loved each other for a very long time.
Well, Dad brought Mom out of the woods, out of the mountains, into New Jersey. I mean, how much different does it get than that, right? New Jersey might as well be Mars.
Oh my gosh, yes, and she went immediately to your grandparents' house in New Jersey, which was, I think, across the river from New York City. So that had to have been a big adjustment.
It would be a huge adjustment to be that far away from everything you knew, but I'm sure that she handled it super easy just because she was that type of person. Take on anything and just run with it.
So I'm sure between having babies, Joe in school, once again, I think everybody was poor in those days, probably poor beyond what you kids in your generation will ever even really appreciate. You know, we had food and paid the bills, and that was about it.
Our big treat would be cheese and crackers and a half a case of Horlock beer, which was $1.56 for a half a case.
I mean, when I hear about their early life, it's just amazing that they are the, I said this before, they are the epitome of the working poor.
Your mama, I bet she didn't see a movie 3 years. She didn't have a car to go out and do things. She was pretty well glued to that house and the kids. But she never complained. Never, ever. She just adjusted to whatever the situation was and made do with whatever we had.
Always saw them as unbelievably hardworking people. 100 times harder working than I could ever be. I felt like I could never. It's just like like working robots, you know. Dad worked all hours of the day and night. If he was done with his job in Pittsburgh, he was out working on the farm. And Mom just, you know, every single day clean every bit of the house, every single day cook every meal, every last little thing.
You know, I don't think there's like one lazy bone or was one lazy bone in Darlene's body. Idle was not in her vocabulary. And it was just, and if she wasn't doing that, she was always cleaning something or baking something or cooking something. So work ethic was just, or she was out in the yard. I mean, just, yeah, super, super strong and something to strive for and to admire for sure.
And worked hard all the time. She never stopped working. That's one of the things, I guess, that you could say about her that was fundamental, was that she got up in the morning and she started and she never stopped. I remember in the house in Avella with all those rooms and stairs, and every house, every room got cleaned every day, every carpet got vacuumed every day, every floor got swept and mopped, the windows got washed, it was everything every day.
And then the cooking. She'd be at my house and her mind would just, I think probably the day before, she'd start thinking about what to fix. And we'd start at 5:30 in the morning and finish about 7. She'd have 4 salads, 3 cakes, 2 kinds of potatoes, bread, and she never seemed to be tired. I didn't know how she could do that.
She's like a little ball of energy because she is so tiny, but she never stops. She's constantly moving, and even when she's exhausted, she still wants to get up and do things. So she's not someone to sit around and be idle.
She saw work as a form of relaxation. Me, relaxation was getting horizontal with a tall, cool beer and a good program on TV. Hers was work. And a matter of fact, to sit around like I'm talking about bothered her. It put guiltiness into her or something. She couldn't do it.
Even when you're on vacation or something, you kind of almost feel guilty that you're not getting up and doing something.
Grandma never sat down. I mean, maybe for 10 minutes during the day, but she would, I remember her hand wiping the floors when they lived on the mountain. She wouldn't mop them. She would just kind of be upside down wiping the floors, and she never sat down. So she would go bake something, and then she would clean up after it, and then she would go make something else, and then she'd be cleaning the house, and she would, I mean, just going and going and going and going nonstop.
I mean, she put people 30 years younger than her to shame. She got up at the crack of dawn and she went all day long every day, and she was happy to do that. Yeah, amazing.
Her work ethic was so strong, but she didn't think of it as work. She loved everything she was doing. Hard work is how she was raised, and I think that continued as she became a wife. She was hardworking. As she became a mother, she was hardworking. But I don't know that she saw it as work. I think that it was her passion and it was what she loved.
I mean, they were honest, hardworking, bettering themselves, working their fingers to the bone, poor as you can possibly imagine. But the stories about how poor they were are just kind of chilling. And yet, they rose above that, and they made sacrifices. You know, Dad had a scholarship to go get a master's degree, and he said, no, I need to make some money. My family's starving.
Well, surely her life, you know, prior to being married was tough, you know, just a hard scrabble kind of life. And then after getting married, you know, they had nothing at the beginning and just made do. And I think that builds character. I mean, you're either going to go one way or the other with that kind of situations presented to you. You're either going to get bitter and resentful, or you're going to take it head on and make it work. And that's exactly what they both did. I think Mom grew up in a way that gave her the resources internally to say, okay, what is it we need and how do we make it work? And she brought that all through, you know, her life, especially the early parts of their marriage when they didn't have anything.
You know, whatever would have been her lot in life, she accepted that as the way it was supposed to be and made the best of it.
She was capable. She could cook, she could fix stuff, she knew how things worked.
Well, you know, if there was something that she didn't know how to do, and it was important that in her mind that she had to know how to do it, then she would learn how to do it. And once she learned how to do it, she owned it.
She could just step into any situation and make it work.
I remember getting up when we got married and opening the cupboards and Mom saying, "What is he looking for?" And I felt like some pancakes. And so I was looking for the Aunt Jemima box. "Oh, we don't have any of that, but I'll make you some pancakes." So she gets out the flour and eggs and whatever it is, she's mixing this stuff up. And I was in wonder. I opened the refrigerator to look for the Caro syrup. There wasn't any. I said, "Now what are you going to do?" "I'll have to make that." Gets out the brown sugar and whatever of magic she did. And pretty soon we had pancakes and syrup. And it happened with everything. It was a discovery process. Every week it'd be something different she'd make and do.
We would pick berries at her house when she lived at the other mountain house. We would pick berries when I was there for the summer, and she would go home and make a pie out of it. And I thought that was like the coolest thing, because I never seen like somebody like take something from nature and then make a pie out of it. Like within 30 minutes, it was berries and now it's like pie. It like blew my mind. So like everything that you gave her, she could make better. And I thought that was like the coolest thing, how you could like make cool stuff out of really nothing.
Well, it was obvious that nothing was given to them. So everything they've got, even now, is a result of hard work. And, you know, you don't complain. You just do what has to be done. I think there's a huge ethic or ethos that they have where if something's broken, you fix it. You don't just throw it away and start over, right? And I think that that mindset is what brought them through hard times. It brought them to the success that they have and made them, you know, who they are, and given us as their kids a foundation of, you know, that was huge.
It's amazing to me the sacrifices they made for their family, and you know, and then you look at where they went. It's just this upward trajectory, you know, and you know, that was from nothing but hard work and discipline and financial discipline. They just model people in terms of you know, the idea of work ethic, kind of the American dream, that whole thing. You can't think of a better example of the way it should be.
And as I act the way I do because I think of her, then my kids see that, and as they grow up, maybe they think, yeah, I want to be a strong person. I want to be capable.
Oh my gosh, one of the most creative people I've ever known. You know, I think a lot of the artwork around the house, Darlene, you know, painted a lot of those things. Just, I mean, incredible artwork.
She was an artist. I mean, she figured out how to paint and crochet and, you know, do things like that.
But she could do just about anything. She was amazing that way with the number of different kinds of things that she would find interest in and be able to do.
It seemed like every time I turned around, I discovered a new talent that she had that I didn't know anything about.
She could do anything.
And you would get this idea of this kind of model, I don't know, Martha Stewart, nice, good to people, good with her home, all these kinds of things. What you wouldn't see, and what is almost mind-boggling or shocking when you contemplate it, is that if you peel back the veneer of the Martha Stewart, inside there was Albert Einstein and Bill Gates and Mother Teresa.
But the fact of the matter is, I went through college with her by my side, and she's intensely interested in all kinds of subject matter. I mean, philosophy and history and psychology, music. She was a very cultured person, an avid reader.
She became an avid reader, reading, just devoured books and just wanted more and more and more. And that was an amazing thing, that she was never complacent in terms of that, always looking to grow and learn and do something else.
And always learning. She never stopped learning her entire life.
She just had this endless, sort of bottomless curiosity that she was always wanting to learn and know and more about the world, about people, about cultures, about life.
Just incredibly talented and very smart.
The brilliance and intelligence, the creativity and artfulness, the literary knowledge.
She was just ready and raring to go to just see new cultures and meet new people, and if there was something that she saw somewhere, or maybe it was a new dish she tried, she'd come home and then figure it out, because she was like, I got to figure out how to do that. Maybe it wasn't a recipe, maybe it was a dress or a shirt or a skirt or something. I mean, she would figure it out.
She would walk through a store and she would see a dress, and where most people would say, I'm going to buy that dress, or I'm going to save my money to buy that dress, she would have it in her mind, and she would immediately go to the fabric store and she would find a pattern, and she would find the material she wanted, and before dinner she was wearing that dress. And you know, that was just came out of nowhere. And she could do that all day long.
I mean, she would learn something and then go do it. So, you know, she went to Meadowcroft, the little historical village in Avella, and came back and started carving apple heads and let them shrink. And that was the coolest thing.
Wallpapering, and crocheting, and cooking, and sewing, and the whole 9 yards.
She wasn't afraid to try anything new. She was always had some exciting thing to tell me that she was making, or painting, or sewing, and music, and her travels.
She could do anything in terms of, growing food, processing food, cooking food. And she could go out and split wood and bake bread under the wood stove while she's heating the house and cooking the meal and taking care of the animals and the kids.
And she just said, I think it'd be interesting to learn Spanish. Got a course and learned Spanish, like fluent Spanish.
Whenever she made the meals, they were really big, and there was so much that went into it. So it was pretty cool to see how she would do 4 things at once, and it would all turn out really good.
She could make anything. Anything she put her mind to, she did. And she painted this picture for me.
She made the carpets on the floor. She painted the pictures on the walls because she knew all this stuff, but she never told you she knew all that stuff.
With all these talents and all the things, that she knew, it was like she just never really boasted or bragged about any of it.
There wasn't any airs, here I am. This is, I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to learn about you.
You didn't see it because she didn't brag, and she didn't, but good God, what a capable, amazing, talented, smart person.
I think she just wanted to experience as much life as she could. And the way to do that is by constantly learning and growing and reading and going.
They really led an exciting life. And the way Joe explains it, they had a farm or something like that up in Pennsylvania or someplace, and I don't know what they raised. They raised some weird animal.
You had to do the chickens and clean them and, all that stuff. So, and what was really funny, she loved living out here because she was basically a farm kid almost.
She wanted a farm. She wanted not to be in a city.
I think she really loved it out here.
She loved this place. She loved it. She was at home here. But as Pug got older, and I think it all happened in Pennsylvania, I'm not sure where, but she met a minister or someone, and she became saved and become a Christian, and I mean a real Christian.
I remember when she started going to church. We lived behind the church for a year, and we took care of the grounds, and Brian and I would go in and set the Bible or the hymnals up on the chair every week, and she'd take care of the church, and that's where she got started. And then she started meeting pastors and learning more. She was always, she could never learn enough about the Bible and about Christianity.
I do know that one thing that connected us is that we didn't grow up in a Christian home. I mean, not that my parents didn't believe in God, but not in a Christian home not a born-again Christian like I became at 12. And I just remember that being a very strong tie between her and I. Even though she was so far away, we definitely shared that love of Christ.
And I can remember her sharing her story or giving her testimony of when she got saved to some of us. And, what a life-changing experience it was for her inside and out.
She came to know the Lord, as an adult after knowing nothing about Christ.
Darlene, when she got saved, she truly allowed God to transform her. So, and I don't know that Darlene will know how many people she touched, but I think the change that she believed is that she truly was an example of God's love to others.
If I had to say that I ever met a true believer in my life, it was Mom.
That was the center of her life. Everything she did was focused on her faith. It was focused on Jesus and how she believed, and she didn't let a moment go by without thinking about that.
Just being willing to trust the Lord, pray for people, always there and encourage others.
I mean, she, loved God with all her heart more than, anybody, and she lived out what it meant to be a Christian, and that inspires me, along with so many other people, to live out the Christian life like you should, because she showed what it meant to be a Christian. And I mean, you just couldn't, other than Jesus, you couldn't get a better picture of what it meant to be a Christian.
But she was the best example of a true, authentic, Christ-following Christian that I've ever met in my entire life, and I know a lot of Christians.
The key was that she lived it out.
Darlene wasn't one of those people that was always telling you she loved you, but she showed you that she loved you.
When you consider that Jesus said the most important commandment was to love God, and the second most important commandment is to love other people, that just fit into her being. That's the way she was.
But the other part was doing something. You can encourage people all day long with your words, but if you don't ever do anything to help them, well, your words kind of fall empty. But she backed them up. She backed them up with service.
You would see it where people like old people, much older than her, that were just having a rough time of things. And she would make a point to visit with them, to fix them meals, to send them cards, to give them words of encouragement whenever she could, call them on the phone. whenever she could.
Grandma, she was the servant. No matter what, she was there to serve.
But here in the church, she was a servant. There's nothing that she wouldn't do, or she never met a stranger.
She was always there for neighbors or for, all her sons and their spouses and their kids and everything. I mean, and the other thing is that she never said anything about it. She never was seeking the attaboy. She never mentioned that she did it. She never held that against you or anything. She just did it. She just did what she thought should be done to make somebody's life better, and that's who she was.
It's like you had this, ministry to the poor, without ever calling it that or saying, "Hey, look how great I am! I'm helping people." It was absolutely selfless and just incredible.
She spent her entire life taking care of other people.
Because we are not easy. And she took time with me when I needed her. And that's such a blessing. And I am going to, it's going to be hard without her. It's been really rough.
I remember when Darlene and all of her kids moved in with us. I remember when Nana came and stayed with us for a long period of time.
Mom and Dad were friends with George and Darlene Williams. And I guess at some point they got divorced.
And they had marital problems, and they ended up splitting up. She had a bunch of kids to take care of, and no money, welfare, and all that kind of stuff. And so we had her move in with us for a while, try to get her back on her feet.
And Darlene just didn't do well materially for herself. And she had 5 kids, I think. I remember going to see her, and she lived in a trailer, and she was just very poor, and I think she had a lot of heartache. And my goodness, the caring my mom gave to that woman. And, there was a summer when the whole family, or the 2 boys that were around my age, lived with us, and Darlene lived with us.
Wasn't even a second thought about it in her mind, and certainly wasn't in mine either, because a lot of what she would do would rub off on us. And I believe the way it worked, she was able to get a welfare payment if she had to pay for her living or something. And she was living with us, and of course there was no cost involved there. But we started charging her rent so she could qualify. And we took the money and put it in a bank account. And then a few years later, whenever she moved out, we gave her the money back.
And I know that she did things for the pastors and their wives and kids in Avella. And I know there was a woman named Georgie Spence. And I just know all these people that she just was so incredibly supportive and helpful. And Don and Ginger lived behind our property. And they were as dirt poor as you could possibly get. And she would bring them stuff and visit with them.
She came out when my mother was, when she was dying. And just how calm and believing in God and just kind.
I think Dad held her back out of necessity because we couldn't afford to feed three cities. And but I think she would have not, if she had unlimited funds and unlimited houses, she would have just kept bringing people in from wherever she could find them and to help them.
When my father got into some difficulty, he was living in New Jersey, and he called up and said, "I need help." We jumped in the car and drove 800 and some odd miles up there. And she said, "Well, he could move in with us. We could take him back to South Carolina." And I said, "Do you have any idea what kind of a door you're opening if you do that?" And even I didn't appreciate the extent of the problem when I said that. But her comment was, this is the light shedding moment, if he's your father, he's my father. That was it.
When we were little, you know, we went to church with her. So I think it's really guided a lot of folks, and that faithfulness and was something to aspire to for most of us, something we looked up to.
You know, deeds over words, and boy, that was Mom. I mean, she did it all, but she really lived it, and that has made an indelible, just a lasting impression that'll never go away in my life.
So, and I don't know that Darlene will know how many people she touched, but I think the change that she believed is that she truly was an example of God's love to others.
I think that was Grandma's element, was just taking care of kids. She just loved kids, and she could relate to kids.
I think you can kind of see her light up when children were around, for sure.
And they knew too, they just swarmed towards her. She could meld with kids so well, it was amazing.
The kids just loved her. It was like, didn't matter whose kids they were, you know, she just squeezed them and loved them and kissed them.
Oh my gosh, she loved children. Yeah, she loved children.
Annie Pug picked her up, and when she saw her, she goes, she is the most beautiful baby I've ever seen. And I just remember going, oh!
Oh, she loved kids. Absolutely loved kids. Yeah.
She was just always there, ready to be with the boys and watch them.
I would call her Grandma Honey. Whenever she'd be taking care of me as a little kid, she would call me Honey, and then somewhere along the way, I guess I started calling her Honey, and that's pretty much stuck.
It wasn't a duty to her. It wasn't a chore.
And she loved it. I don't think she could have had too many kids or could have taken care of too many kids. She loved kids, and she loved people in general, and she loved kids in particular, and babies. When in those days you could go through a supermarket and she'd pick up every baby in the place and hug it and kiss it, and you know, nobody did anything about it then. Of course, that wouldn't work today.
If there were new babies involved in anything, man, she was on fire.
So yeah, the biggest joy for Mom ever was a baby. Didn't matter whose or, so you know, that was a pretty special thing. You know, some people retract from babies, recoil, but not Mom. She was attracted to them no matter what. And you know, you hear the story a million times of being in the grocery store and grabbing some unknown baby and kissing all over. But you know, that genuine love, you couldn't hide, she couldn't hide, and that was, you know, obvious in everything she did when it came to her kids and others. So
Clear blue, out of a clear blue, in a department store like Kmart, a little black baby in a stroller, beautiful little baby, didn't know her, didn't know her mother, just runs up and starts kissing it. Well, now they'd throw you in jail if you did something like that, but that's the way she was.
And you'd be walking through a store or in some public place, and some random woman is coming by with her baby, and Mom would just walk away from us and go over and pick up people's babies or start talking to them and kissing them and holding them. Complete strangers, and we're all mortified, of course.
If there was a baby, Grandma was holding it, and Grandma was kissing it, and it didn't matter whose baby it was.
It's like all of the sort of self-awareness, whatever there was with Mom, just went away when she saw a baby. It all just went away, and it didn't matter. She just wanted to go love on that child.
Yeah, she loved babies, but she liked babies a lot. She had like an obsession with them.
I remember when Nick was born, we were down the beach, and she held him, sat there and held him for about 2 hours. And my dad went over and was like, you know, other people might want to hold him. And she goes, no, I'm good. We're like, okay. But we'd be in a restaurant and she would do that. Like, just go over to people and talk to their kids and their babies. And yeah.
Oh my word. She was like the baby whisperer. Yes, absolutely.
she just took him and just started talking to him and kissing him. And just kiss and kiss, and of course Bo was just kissing her right with his mouth right open. And
she loved babies. She'd pick babies up and snuggle them and kiss them. If anybody was having a baby, she would crochet a blanket for them. She loved babies.
Her passion for kids, right up to the end. You know, she, as an 80-year-old, wanted to be in the nursery at the church. That's where she wanted to serve. She was either standing at the front door making people feel welcome, or she was in the nursery holding, rocking babies, and that was her happy place.
Our daughter Libby will never forget Darlene.
If I could talk to her again, I'd tell her, as I did in the last minutes of her life, over and over and over and over again, how much I love her.
Oh, I just thank her for being who she was. I don't think she needs to change one bit. I wouldn't have changed one thing about her at all. I just thank her for being who she was, and to me and to everybody around her.
I would throw my arms around her and I'd give her a kiss, and I would thank her for just being a good person.
Tell her I love her.
If she were here right now, I don't know, I just like being there with her and just looking at her face.
I'm looking forward to the day when I get to greet you again. And
Yeah, I'd say you did it, Mom. You did it. You know, everything that mattered to you, that you wanted to have and accomplish and do for people, you did it.
I'd honestly probably tell her about Shepherd, because I know she was excited to meet him.
You know, I wish it wasn't the way it is. I wish we had more time. I wish we would have known, you know, but I'm glad she's in a better place.
I want to come to your house and I want you to be there. And I don't want to have to like sum up my life's feelings for you when I see you. I want to just talk about something funny that happened and have a meal and tell a funny story and just know that you're always going to be there, because it felt like you're always going to be there.
And I think about her a lot, especially with my baby.
You know, I would just tell her how much that I loved her, that I missed her, and that I can't wait to see her again. And thank you for all that she's done.
Then maybe someday, Honey Pug, I'll be as great of a woman as you are.
I think I'd tell her how much I love her, how much of an influence she's been.
So I'd just, like to thank her for being there.
I think she'd be all proud of us being here again together as family.
I miss her. Yeah, and that I love her.
I don't even know what I want to tell her. I just want her to know that I loved her a lot.
I'd tell her I'm glad to see her and I'd like to take her fishing.
I want her to be the one to greet me when I come through the gate.
I would just thank her for living a life well lived.
Simply thank you.
I think it's our job to keep loving each other and try not to have it be a big sad thing. I mean, I know she's missed, but try to make it a happy memory of all the good things and try to fill your hearts and your mind instead of the sadness. Try to remember all the good.
And that was my last conversation that I ever had with her, was about faith and just her being so excited that David got saved before he had passed away. And she was crying and I was crying, and it was just a great conversation.
I guess that I love her and I miss her.
Just that I loved her, and so honored that I got to be part of that kind of family and part of that raising and upbringing, and yeah.
She had powerful, profound effect on people.
That she was amazing. That I loved her.
I think that she now is in a better place and happier, and someday we'll see her.
I would tell her that I miss her. Of course I love her. I wish she was still here. Thank you. Just for being who she is. And that we're gonna take care of Dad. Don't worry about Joe. We'll figure it out.
If I could talk to her again, one of the things I would tell her is that she's laid an amazing foundation. Her family's strong, and the lessons that she's taught everyone, they've learned, and that they're gonna be okay. Because I know that the only thing she was thinking was, are they gonna be okay? Is my family gonna be okay without me? Who's gonna take care of them? Because that's the kind of person she was.
So the morning of your surgery, we were all there to be with you and spend time with you. And that morning, as we were leaving, you called me over to you, and you took my hand and you looked up at me and you said, "I love you." And I know I said it back, but I don't know how loudly or how clear I said that. So to be clear, I love you.
And that I will never forget her for the rest of my life, especially with the kind of impact that she had on me.
Yeah, I love you more than words can say. And you put a mark on this world that's never going to go away. And I just wish you were here.
I know that this is probably going to be me when I get older, because I love life, and I know she loved life, and I know that she didn't want to leave you guys, and I know that she fought really hard. Does everybody cry?
Someone said, if you could do anything with your life and, talent and skills, don't worry about that. You had all of the talent and skills to do anything you wanted to do. What would you do? Darlene said, she said, I have done absolutely everything that I wanted to do in life, and I'm very happy, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Mom told me stories about when she was a little girl, and all she ever wanted to do was have a husband and a home and children. And that's all she ever wanted. She would go out in the fields and dance with fence posts, believing they were her husband. She would carry babies, rocks wrapped up in blankets, and pretend that they were her babies. And that's what she wanted, and that's all she wanted. That's what she wanted out of life. And she did exactly what she wanted to do. She found a husband, she got a home, she had her kids, and she was satisfied with that.
She was the role model for a good wife, a good mother, a good Christian, and a good friend.
Some little girl from Curlew, Washington, who would think, created all that?
I just would want her to know that how much is going to continue on and carry on in this world because of her.
She was happy. She was right up until the end. She was absolutely satisfied with who she was and what she'd done. I don't think she regretted 1 second of it.
Your mom knew. She wanted to be mom.
You did it. You made it. You ran the race. You fought the fight. And here's your reward.
I would say, I love you. I love you. I love you.